Good evening, everyone, and welcome to a meeting of the Brant County Council, January 31st, 2023. Attendance has been taken, noting that Councillor Pierce is not with us. He's going to try to Zoom in later if he can. If he does, we'll acknowledge that he's with us. Second thing on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. Do I have anyone that wants to add anything? Councillor Chambers?
Under other business, the March 7th Planning and Development Committee.
Thank you. Anything else for other business, new business? Seeing nothing, Councillor Oakley?
The approval agenda moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Coleman that the County of Brant Council agenda and addendum for January 31st, 2023 be approved.
As amended. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Pecuniary interest? What do we have?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. 7.25, 7.27, and 7.28 as social services in the John Noble home are our clients.
7.2, 7.5, and 7.8?
Yeah, sorry, 7.2.5.
Yep.
And then 7 and 8 in that same series.
Thank you.
Thanks.
The next thing on the agenda, number 4, is our public, it's going to be a public meeting. This is a public meeting regarding the consideration of the engineer's drainage report at the Hugh Wright Municipal Drain. I'd like to declare this public meeting open, and I'd like to call on Mr. McIntyre to come and present for us, please. Noting you have 10 minutes.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of council. This report for the Hugh White Municipal Drain was initiated under Section 76 of the Drainage Act. Reports under Section 76 of the Drainage Act are a little less common than the ones we typically do because the sole purpose of the report is to update the watershed boundary and the schedules of maintenance that govern the drain. There is no new construction work proposed as a part of the Section 76 report. So this report was initiated because the County of Brant received a request for maintenance work on the Hugh White Municipal Drain. Upon receiving that request, the Township Drainage Superintendent and County staff reviewed the existing maintenance schedules on file and determined that those schedules were not fair and equitable to be used to assess out the said maintenance costs that would be incurred. So therefore, an updated schedule and report is required. And when I was appointed to prepare this report, I looked at the old schedules and agreed with their decision that the old schedules were out of date. So to help orientate everyone, how do I get the page to show? Sorry. There we go. Yeah. Okay. So to help orientate everyone, the watershed for the Hugh White Municipal Drain is located just northwest of the village of Burford, in between 5th and Concession Road, just west of East Quarter Town Line Road. The drain itself is the solid, bold, continuous line in the center of the watershed, and the drain starts out as an open ditch on the south side of 6th Concession Road at Whiteman's Creek, and then continues up across the road, where it then switches over to being a closed tile, up to and across 5th Concession Road, where it switches back again to being an open ditch. So in order to prepare a new maintenance schedule, we first updated the watershed boundary using available LiDAR information, and I went out and checked a few spots, site investigations of a few locations. For preparing a new schedule, we decided to break down the drain into 4 different components. The reason for doing that is to give the drainage superintendent the ability to assess out specific spots. If they do a specific maintenance work at a location, it's easier for them to assess out. The reason for doing that is when maintenance work has occurred, you assess it out to the properties at that location and further upstream. Properties further downstream don't pay for work that happens upstream. So After the work was prepared, we held a meeting at the community center in Burford where all the owners in the watershed were invited. And then following that meeting, I met with one of the owners to review their property and made a slight change to the report. The ultimate purpose of this report is to prepare a new maintenance schedule, and that's what we refer to as Schedule B in my report. This schedule outlines the proportions that each property would pay for maintenance work when that work is occurred. And but to prepare this report, there is a cost to that, and that cost has to be assessed out to the owners and lands and roads in the watershed. So the cost to prepare this report is $7,500. The watershed contains 15 properties and 3 roads, which isn't a whole lot. So in order to assess out the cost for this report, I decided to break down the properties into 4 different categories. Those categories include large farms that exist along the drain, those properties along the drain that are not large farms, so it's smaller, more residential-based properties, then larger farms that are on the periphery of the watershed that outlet a lot of water into the drain, and finally small properties that are on the edge of the drain. So the assessments for each of those categories to make up the $7,500 of this report are $600, $400, $400, and $200 respectively for each of those categories that I outlined. That is all I have to present. I'd be happy to field any questions from owners in council this time.
Thank you very much. Are there any members of the that are here tonight that want to speak to this report or assessment? Okay. I'll ask for the second time. Is there anyone here that wants to speak to this report of the assessment? Seeing none. I'm reminded to let you know that the engineering report is not open for appeal at this time. The assessment appeal will be heard on the 31st of March 2023 if this report is adopted by council. With that being said, are there any questions from council? Councillor Chambers.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the engineer, could you explain how the agricultural grant applies to the various categories that you have divided the assessment schedule into?
Yes, so grant does not apply to this actual report that I am doing here today. Section 76 reports are not eligible for grant. Grant is eligible for the maintenance work that will be done by the drainage superintendent, which will be this coming year. But this specific report is not grant eligible.
If I might, just a follow-up. If this schedule is adopted, there may be future maintenance situations that arise that would be assessed according to your assessment schedule. If future maintenance work, will that be divided in the same categories that you've divided the cost of this report? And if so, how does the 1/3 OMAF grant apply to those properties?
Yes, so through you, Mr. Mayor. The maintenance work, the Schedule B in my report breaks the drain down into 4 different sections along the drain, and I have outlined every property is broken down into a percent that's from each of those areas. And when that work occurs, which if the work is doing maintenance work through the whole drain, they'll just start at the bottom interval. That includes all properties, and they will use the proportions I have in this Schedule B. And at the time that work occurs, what will happen, or when they're going to go bill it out, the drainage superintendent, along with the finance department, will check the farm tax class property rate for each property. It's available on OMAFRA's website, and you can see the properties that have that class designation, farm class designation, and those are the properties who would receive it. I believe I did check it. I believe all the major farm properties in here do have that. Sometimes people let it lapse, and they're just reminded to get it. but I believe they all have it. I didn't study it carefully because it didn't affect my report. Normally I would, because that would normally, the cost of a normal construction report, I would be looking at the grant for everybody's property. So I didn't look at that carefully, but when they do the maintenance work, that will be checked and the grant will come off of the assessment, yes.
So just so they understand it correctly, your classifications do not affect one way or the other the 1/3 agricultural grant. That is determined by the assessment impact people or whatever.
Yeah, there's two components. There's the four breakdown, the four different types of properties I broke down were for the cost of this report that I prepared here. Separately, there's a separate schedule that will outline what everybody pays for maintenance work. Yes. Thank you.
Councillor Miller, you're next, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to be clear what the next steps are, through to presenter. You said this is appealable, yes? The report?
Yes, yes. If there was issues with the report that needed to be corrected, we could take it back and correct it. What's appealable will be at the quarter revision, which we will have coming up at March 31st, which are people's assessments. They can appeal both the assessments for the cost of this report, Schedule A, and they can appeal the maintenance assessments, which is the proportions for future maintenance work. So that's all done at the quarter revision. So owners are, I guess, reminded, if any are in attendance, that if they have an appeal, that it's best to put it in writing to the municipality in advance.
And so, to you, Mr. Mayor, will we be striking that court of appeal tonight?
Through your worship to Councillor Miller, there will be a report coming forward at the February cycle requesting appointments for that court of revision, and that court of revision is scheduled to sit on March 31st.
Okay, that's what I want to know. Thank you.
Any other questions for the presenter? Seeing none, thank you. What does committee want to do with this? Receive? Councillor Coleman, looking for a seconder? Councillor Kyle? Okay, so this needs to go to 2 readings for our bylaws too. So it is on the floor. It has been seconded. All those in favor? Councillor Chambers, you look confused. Have I done something wrong?
I am a little bit confused. The motion was to receive. We have to receive and proceed to give 2 readings of the bylaw, waiting for the provisional 3rd reading after the quarter revision and so on. So
In February.
do we need another resolution to, or will that occur under bylaws?
No, I think we need it now. Oh, she's looking for a friendly amendment for the moment.
Friendly amendment to the
Thank you.
motion.
Seconder, Councillor Coleman. All those in favor? Thank you. I now declare the public meeting closed. Moving on to 4.2. The folks from Lansdowne are here. Rita Marie. Maybe when you get to the podium, you could let us know who you've brought with you and who you represent.
Oak Hill and Mount Pleasant Street, Mount Pleasant neighborhoods of Brant. And in my daytime gig, I'm the executive director of Lansdowne Children's Center. And I want to prioritize as much time as possible of having family voices from our organization speak to you. For those who were familiar from our time before council, we are an organization supporting children and youth to reach their potential, kids who live with physical, communication, or developmental challenges. And that comes down to kids who may enter the world early as preemies and those who are leaving our support as they're aging out of school. It could be a description. It's basically kids who have the likelihood of benefiting from our services. And so, Our services tend to have some diagnoses attached to them, or they may be without a diagnosis, but the common factor is that kids can benefit functionally from the services that are available. And these are Government of Ontario provincially funded services, as well as some that are really important to us that we provide through donations and our foundation makes possible. And the common thread as well is that we bring it together under one roof so that it gives that efficiency of delivery, but also makes it convenient for the family. The growing up that we support at Lansdowne has also been a factor for us as an organization. And with the organization having grown up since in the 1960s, being known as the Rotary Crippled Children's Center at the hospital, the evolution itself is a success as we've grown with additional services to match the population's needs. And with the growth since being at the current main site in Brantford on Mount Pleasant Street, the more than doubling of on-site staff that we now have 120 on-site. We've more than tripled the number of kids served annually. And during the time of growth since we've seen you last, we also have dedicated sites and teams in Haldeman and Norfolk. So that growth has been a positive story of continuing, but we've now gotten to the stage that we have outgrown. And with that comes the challenges that I'm going to let you hear from a parent. What does that mean when we've outgrown our space?
First of all, thank you for taking the time to listen to our delegation. My name is Mike Katopoulos. I'm a small business owner. I'm a member of the Lansdowne Children's Center Board of Directors, a resident of Mount Pleasant, and a parent of a child with special needs. Now, many of you know me, and you know my son's story. So rather than just tell you impersonal statistics, I'd like to explain the reality of what those statistics mean to a family. At 1 year old, my son Jack was diagnosed with Williams syndrome. It's a lifelong genetic disorder. As a parent, this is a very tragic moment. Your hopes and dreams and plans for your child change like that. Jack's diagnosis was easily the most stressful and tragic moment of my life. In the blur of the diagnosis, parents in my position are told early intervention is key, and the earlier you get him into therapy, the better his outcome will be. So immediately we were referred to Lansdowne for occupational therapy, physiotherapy, speech therapy, basically every therapy that Lansdowne could do, which is quite a bit, we were referred to. Now, the time being on the waiting list is filled with helplessness and hopelessness. These families are dealing with a life-altering diagnosis, not just their child's life, but theirs as well, and being told early intervention everywhere they turn. So these families have Lansdowne Children's Center who are so eager to help and so willing to help, have the expertise, but who have to say, I'm sorry, you have to wait. And these families, like mine, sit and wait. We were finally admitted, and the first thing we worked on was Jack's learning to swallow food. We narrowly avoided Jack needing a feeding tube, thanks to Lansdowne Children's Center. And the impact of wanting to do best for your child and trying to do best, but having circumstances beyond your control standing in your way is absolutely the most helpless feeling you can have as a parent. Right now, 2,300 families are sitting in that position on that waiting list. We cannot let that number grow to the projected 13,500. Again, 13,500 is what's projected by 2041. We can't have 13,500 families miss that early intervention window. We can't have 13,500 families feeling helpless and hopeless. On top of the immediate impact this has on families on the wait list, the impact doesn't stop there. The draw for families to Lansdowne reaches far beyond existing residents. When I started my own business, I had the option to move to another municipality to pursue this endeavor, and that option was immediately crossed off my list. We had to stay near Lansdowne. Not only is Lansdowne a reason to stay here, it can be a reason to move here. A state-of-the-art facility that isn't significantly over capacity is a draw for families with special needs children. That has obvious economic impacts on the county. I'll leave you with a quote that I firmly believe. The true measure of any society can be found in how it treats its most vulnerable members. We ask that you please renew our resolution to support Lansdowne Children's Center to receive provincial Stage 1 redevelopment approval. Thank you.
We have been at work since we were here last. We had submitted blueprints and a business case to the province. We also had COVID since we were in contact last. So what we've done in the meantime is updated our costing. COVID has wrought significant changes on supply chain and labor. So we've had to make adjustments to make sure that the population changes that also occurred during COVID when we had the GTA exodus, and we've seen more movement into our county with the growth that you're well familiar with, that we had a building that would be able to withstand that. In terms of that population growth, we are in the same stage as our community's hospital. We're looking for that stage 1 approval because that is the formal route because of the size of our organization, and that's the formal route that we need to be going through. The important thing is, again, keeping the services together so that it's efficient and appropriate for families. And speaking of families, I have a colleague who's going to share another voice.
Hi, my name's Renee. I live in Paris. I've started my journey with Lansdowne as a parent, then a volunteer, and most recently a staff member. My new position is the Family Engagement Coordinator. I am involved in encompassing not just our clients that come to us, but the families themselves. They come as a package deal. Offering assistance while they wait on wait lists and helping them navigate their journey is one of my main goals. Listening to their stories of our wait lists is sad on 2 aspects. One, being a parent because I've been in their shoes, and 2, now being a staff member with my hands kind of tied, not being able to offer them more that I know that they wish and desire. My programming, when I offer activities and stuff for our families, requires the space, which we are limited on. So I'm always constantly bartering with other staff members for space availability. Plus, in order for our families to participate, they want to feel safe in leaving their kids somewhere. So they tend to bring their kids to us for free childcare. It's a major draw, but that requires double the space that I need to offer my programs. That is really challenging as a planner. I'm very limited in what I can offer these days. I've had to be creative in finding space that can accommodate both parents and children within our community. Challenges that face that situation is their availability. I have to work on their schedule as well as ours. Cost, whether they're accessible or not to our families. Lansdowne is accessible. And whether our kids feel comfortable there. New places are really hard for our children. And if the participants don't feel comfortable, then the parents and the families miss out on these great opportunities we can offer. Having a larger new space would allow for more programming and collaboration amongst staff and services. We could do more programs and get kids off the wait list to do more group activities and things like that as opposed to individual therapy if we had more space available to us. With our growing communities, and I know you are all aware of how much we are growing, and the new families each day requiring services, it is instrumental for us to offer the best service we can provide with a building that addresses our issues. Thank you for your continued support in helping us help you and your neighbors.
Thanks, Renee. I also know that council looks at benchmarking and what's the standard, and to that end, we also think that you would be interested in knowing that a support for the redevelopment of Lansdowne also would bring us in line with the equity with other children's treatment centers being redeveloped across the province, so that it's a plea for some equity. Just as we need a new hospital, it's not either or, we need a new Lansdowne. So we will appreciate your consideration of a renewed resolution and a letter of support from your mayor, because that does influence our minister. Be happy to answer any questions you have.
Thanks, Rita Marie. Are there any questions for Rita Marie? Councillor Miller and then Councillor Oakley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through to Rita Marie. Yeah, I was there the 2019 when you were showing us the architectural designs. I didn't realize the wait list was that big. I guess it's gotten worse in those 3 years since. But I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the original plan was to sell 39 Mount Pleasant Street.
That is correct, and that is still the intention, that we will be required to contribute a portion of the building cost of the new development, and so our intention is that that would include sale of property and also a fundraising campaign for our portion. Yeah.
Okay, so follow-up question. But looking at the numbers, what would be at what point do you get too big a facility? In other words, you need another one.
Well, actually, we have had to, in the recosting, have to do a scaling down. We have standard numbers that the Ministry of Children, Community and Social Services has been working our business case through. And While ours started off at a model that looked similar to what they need in Durham region, they've been looking at the ratios of our population and growth. They are like the Ministry of Education, they are reluctant to build for future capacity. They will build at what is the current demand. And so that, because it's already a multiple, it's 3 times what we currently have, we know there'll be a substantial improvement in terms of the standard we can provide. By going to a site that allows for future growth, that should prevent the delays that are standing in the way of us redeveloping on our current site. We're landlocked and the current structure doesn't allow us to build up. So hopefully that addresses that point about the paralysis that the current leadership finds themselves in.
Okay, thank you very much for the answer. Appreciate it.
Councillor Oakley.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to delegation, how will this new building position Lansdowne in comparison to other treatment centers in the province?
I'm glad you asked that because I was referencing that. It's a point of equity. The Chatham community is comparable in size to Brant, perhaps a little bit smaller. We have some similarities, and our organization serves Brant, Haldeman, and Norfolk, and they've been funded to be redeveloping and having a new building. So there is an equity argument there about our numbers necessitating Brant being redeveloped. Also, the services that can be provided when it's appropriate space. We don't need to look any further than looking in Hamilton. Ron Joyce Children's Center was redeveloped, and it reflects the same kind of needs that we have. They're a larger center, but it's the same regulated health professionals serving kids for some of the same needs. And so it's a question of equity. We have staff who are trained to be able to deliver those services. We don't have space to use or store the equipment that needs it. So it would give us some equity.
Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Rita Marie. Can you tell us what kind of timeline you hope you could work on here and what the cost is of this new facility?
I wish I had more answers for you on those because we are subject to the Treasury Board of Cabinet's decisions that affects timing, and also any thresholds that Infrastructure Ontario may stipulate that above a certain point that they will take control of the process in conjunction with the ministries. It's meant to be a better way of getting value for the dollar. So they have procurement processes that do take a little bit more, but it's meant to ensure that projects come in on or under budget. So that the first step will be getting the stage 1 approval at Treasury Board of Cabinet, which is where we're looking for some support to leverage. That sets in place a number of sequelae of additional approval steps, and then we'll have the refinement of our current architectural design because it is now outdated because it's been sitting, that there is some time for updating those, but it can be a 3 to 5 year process depending on what delays are faced. So that's what feels unconscionable about having to wait any longer for it. And as to the price, I really wish I could answer that better. Since we were here last, we've had to do some recosting and looking at any elements that could be, I say sacrificed, but they could be modified so that we could bring it down the price point. And that has meant removing a 4th floor shell, again, to the element of not agreeing to fund for future capacity. So removing a 4th floor shell in the current design, as well as having to remove a pool. Those items allowed us to significant in the sense of dropping price by around 9%, but supply chain has seen and labor have seen costs go up. But when the cost per square foot is applied over a smaller number of square feet, the price has gone up. Our ministry's capital branch is very reluctant to be talking price and number because of if it is a stipulated sum versus a public-private partnership, we're looking at really different cost points because they build in contingencies that are on top of what the net cost is to build.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions for Rita Marie? Seeing none, Rita Marie, thank you for what you do. I'm very familiar with Lansdowne. I've chaired your Christmas party many years, and I've seen the kids in action, and there are many more Mikes in the county of Brant, and I don't know what we'd do without you, so thank you for being where you are, and I hope you don't move too far away when we give you this recommendation. I hope you stay local for us.
May I make one comment? I apologize.
Okay.
On page 6 of our annual report, I wanted to let you know, sorry, page 5, you'll see handwritten notes to tell you what we've done for the 9 months of this current fiscal year. We've already exceeded the entire last year of who's being served. So the kids are coming back for service, and the growing community is what we know we need to get in front of, because the demand is growing. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Councillor Kyle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to move the following resolution, which will be seconded by Councillor Garneau. Whereas Lansdowne Children's Center provides local specialized services to over 3,200 plus children and youth living with physical, communications, and or developmental disabilities. And whereas growth of population and corresponding pediatric services has caused severe crowding of Lansdowne's main site, causing delays for 2,330 children and youth, including Brant County residents who are waiting for services. And whereas the Ministry of Children, Community and Social Services has acknowledged these pressures by the 2019 approval of functional planning support to allow Lansdowne to submit an updated major capital business case in 2020, which Lansdowne updated in 2022. And whereas Lansdowne's principal building cannot meet the future needs of the City of Brantford, the County of Brant, Norfolk County, and Haldimand County, the Six Nations of the Grand River, and Mississaugas of the Credit First Nations. And whereas Lansdowne has undertaken lengthy and considerable work pursuing alternative premises and added service sites to prevent families from facing delays accessing critical service, but the longer it must wait for a commitment of major capital approval, the longer children wait. And whereas there is strong community support for Lansdowne operating in appropriate sized premises, therefore be it resolved that Council requests that the Government of Ontario immediately grant Stage 1 planning approval for Lansdowne to progress through its plans for a new premises, inclusive of the necessary funding to enable it to move forward with this critical infrastructure.
Thank you, Councillor Kyle. Everyone's clear on the proposed resolution? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Thank you for coming in. Good luck. 4.3 on the agenda are the ladies from the museum. Miranda, Jasmine, and Marie. Do you want to come to the podium? You can state your full names for us, please.
Hopefully you can hear me a little bit better there now. Thank you. I'm Miranda Stiklanka, chairperson of the Paris Museum and Historical Society. I come here today with Jasmine Bedard, a director, and also Marie Williamson, sitting over there, our treasurer. Today I want to introduce you just a little bit about our strategic plan. So I'll just kind of talk a little bit about that. So a bit of context about our museum. So we've been around for 50 years. We actually celebrated our 50th anniversary last year. We're a pretty significant incorporated registered charity. Our mission is to collect, preserve, and make accessible the cultural heritage of Paris and area. We're pretty significant in that we actually house 40,000 plus objects. We have people coming to us for property inquiries. Say they purchase a house, they want to know a little bit more about the house they bought. They come to us and ask how much we can tell them about that property. Also family history, and a multitude of things like businesses and economic development in the area. We also are one of the only places to house a museum, historical society, and archives in the province, so all under one roof, which is also a pretty important aspect of our museum. So I'm just going to go on to the next part. So our current functions, basically, we collaborate with community partners. We work with the Paris Agricultural Society. We have exhibits in the Sobeys Remembrance Day, and then we also have we also are involved with the Canadian Industrial Heritage Museum, McMaster thesis students, and we also host walking tours, which is a pretty fascinating service that we provide. So people can come and talk to knowledgeable historians about various areas in town. Other things that we do as well is We contribute to the County of Brant's Public Library digital online collection, which is important. And we also provide history lectures. So we've actually, this year, we are hosting a series of lectures from knowledgeable people in our area, which the public can attend, which is a nice, we're a hub of knowledge, which is nice to know. And then provincial historical research to various county departments and committees, as well as academics and the general public. We also do outreach programs, including presentations. We also do social clubs, and also we host, this is the important thing, we publicly host hundreds of visitors year-round from all over the world, international. So we have people from everywhere coming to the small town of Paris, learning more about the county of Brant and area as well. So we also are run by volunteers, which is a very important aspect of us. So, and also we log almost 6,000 on-site hours for these volunteers. So that's a pretty pivotal thing to know. Just so you can have an idea about visitor data. So in 2019, pre-pandemic, we had 600 visitors logged. So we do keep track of this data, which is really important. Then as soon as you can see it, as 2020 hits with the pandemic, we have it drops down to 80, so it's a big drop. And then in 2021, we didn't log visitor data for various reasons, lockdowns, other things like that. The museum was closed for significant periods of time. And then as you can see, now that we've reopened, things are looking a little bit better. Even in 2022, we've logged 480 visitors. So that's kind of like our post-COVID data that you can see there. And what's the key takeaway there is that, we've obviously, we don't have that pre-pandemic visitorship anymore. And in fact, there's a 20% reduction even when we've opened in 2022 and have had decent visitor traffic. That 20% reduction is indicative that, we do get a lot of, people from all over the world. We do try to do outreach to social media and advertisement, which is important, and we see that Paris is getting more of that too. But the bottom line, though, is that we are seeing a reduced visitor traffic. Okay, so I just want to introduce Jasmine. She's going to talk about our executive summary.
Thanks, Miranda. As she stated, my name is Jasmine Bedard, and I'm director over at the museum as well. Our executive summary here broadly outlines areas which we have identified for the museum as needing updating, such as accuracy reflecting cultural histories of Indigenous communities, refreshing on a consistent basis the content of our permanent and temporary exhibits, finding solutions for the museum's funding gaps, developing plans for consistent branding and public communications, growing our volunteer membership and audience bases, updating our internal infrastructure, which is bylaws, governance, HR, and as well, very importantly, updating our physical space. So we have organized these concerns into priority areas presented here color-coded, which connect further to our objectives. Our objectives are on the next slide here, specifically starting with a foundation of financial health, which would lead us through many of our initiatives, most important of which is a long-term plan to resolve our collections crisis and the outgrowth of our current space into a space suitable for collections in accordance with Ontario Museum standards and best practices. The museum, and by extension the county, has immense opportunity here. So far, growth has been dependent on the time and effort of volunteers working on a diminutive budget. As you can see here, our funding is dependent on multiple grants, which are not guaranteed annually. And at our last 2022 AGM, it totaled $29,500.
Okay, so for expenses, from January to December 2022, we calculated everything, and as you see, we have, starting from our budget of $29,500 at our AGM in 2022 till the end of last year, we have $19,752 left. And the key reason for showing you this is because as a charity organization, we have a lot of expenses. This is the thing we want to note, and if anybody has any questions about these afterward, please, you're more than welcome to ask. The key takeaway there is that right up until our next AGM, then with that money left, we have $9,700, a little bit more than that approximately remaining until we draft up our next budget for our 2023 annual general meeting.
Here we have highlighted pressing concerns for our 1 year and 5 year planning, including accounting and relocation for at the 1 year mark and up to and including paid staffing and educational services at the 5 year mark.
So what we really want to highlight here is, as a museum, we do have a large community connection. We have a permanent we want to basically talk about the possibility of a permanent location that is central to Paris, but is not limited to Paris, because we do understand that Brant County is a significant area, but Paris has the highest population density. But we do want to say that we are a hub, Paris specifically, to a lot of cultural and tourism highlights. The other thing too is we want to ask as well about a location that is accessible potentially with things like wheelchair accessibility, other things like that, and other aspects of museum storage that meets the Ontario Museum Standards and Best Practice. I do want to I definitely would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge the fact that we are in the Silats Community Center, not paying rent. And as an organization, we highly are appreciative and so honored that we have that opportunity to be there. But we just wanted to mention that as part of our strategic plan, thinking about these localities is something that we do want to factor into these matters. And then also our strategic marketing and branding moving forward would be things like initiatives in social media, developing a better website, and also really importantly, as a cultural heritage center, having opportunities for better education programming as well that people, the public and students and young children can get involved with. So I just wanted to mention a little bit about future initiatives, Jasmine.
So why we're asking you to invest in PMHS. The survival of the museum up until this point serves to show that it significantly contributes to Brant County's cultural and historic preservation. It provides job and volunteer opportunities, education and research facilities, and has the ability to contribute more broadly to the Ontario heritage and tourism sector.
Okay, so thank you very much for listening. If you have any questions, feel free to ask.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for the ladies from the museum? Councillor Hauser first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you to the delegation. First, thank you for what you do. I know a lot of effort goes into preserving and promoting our history, and that's important in retaining the small town charm that everybody likes here. I wanted to encourage you, you mentioned tourism a couple times in your presentation. We have a tourism advisory committee. I wanted to encourage you to maybe give the same presentation to them at some point. That would be time well spent, I think. And my question is, you noted that after the pandemic, attendance was down a little bit to visitors to the museum, and you also mentioned plans to promote and connect with the community more so more people become aware. And I'm wondering if you could just speak briefly a little bit more about that and about how plans to engage with both people who are new to Paris and people who've lived here their whole lives. Thanks.
So I think obviously having very good social media connections is a really important aspect of that. People who are wanting to learn more about Paris obviously need to know that we are here as an important organization that can provide those services and that knowledge. We want to have also like a multifaceted access to resources, both online and physically, that people can come and see through archives, being stored properly, through, a library, that we have a small museum library as well that they can come and learn about. But also they can always come to us and have dialogue about, we are always open to share our information with visitors. Even like things like walking tours, as I mentioned. We want to continue doing those things. And another project we are interested in doing as well is for certain historic buildings, potentially having like sort of an online tour of these houses that can be created through photography and other kind of videography tools. So things that is accessible for newcomers and people that have been in the area for a long time or for generations. So I hope that answers your question. Yeah. Any other questions?
Any other questions? Counselor Miller?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through to the delegation. In an ideal world, what would be how many square feet would you like for a new facility?
Trying to think about how many current square feet we have for our in the Cell Apps facility. I can't remember.
I'm not sure.
Okay, it's not a trick question. I thought you guys
No, and that's yeah.
thought about it. I will follow up with that one later. Easier question. I'm going to lob you one here. You said the AGM is in April. Do you know what day, what time, where?
Yes, we're April. We're aiming toward the end of April.
Oh, you don't have a date yet?
No, we're agreeing. We're actually setting a date in February, and we'll be releasing that shortly.
Okay. Yeah. Don't set it for the last week of April. It's an extremely busy
definitely, yeah.
week. But okay. Anyways, I hope we get an invitation. I'd like to attend if I could.
Absolutely, we'd love to see you there.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you for your presentation. What does committee want to do? Council?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Council.
Thank you. Councilor House?
Move to receive as information.
Thank you, Councilor Oakley. Seconds. All those in favor? Councilor Miller?
I was going to ask Mr. Mayor, do we need to refer that to budget, or do they already have a request in? I guess I should have asked the delegation that, but
we could defer it to budget if council wants to support the request. Councilor House?
It's part of the grant.
Thank you. As there wasn't a specific ask within the presentation, I wasn't immediately thinking in that direction, but I think we're all aware that you know there's a financial situation connected to this, so I would be happy to make that adjustment.
If we could maybe send it to grants instead of to the budget. Seeking a motion to send it to grants. Councilor House and still Councilor Oakley. All those in favor to send it to grants? Thank you. 4.4 on the agenda is St. Joseph's Life Care Center. If you'd like to state your names, please, and I'm just reminding you, you have 10 minutes to speak.
Good evening, Mayor Bailey, and County Councillors. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here this evening. My name is Julie Powell. I am the President and CEO of St. Joseph's Life Care Foundation. And our foundation is responsible for raising funds in the community to support St. Joseph's Life Care Center Campus of Care. And I'm joined tonight by Sandra Romelli. Sandra is the VP of People and Strategy at our Campus of Care. The campus includes our 205-bed long-term care home as well as Stedman Community Hospice. We are respectfully asking the county to consider funding for both organizations tonight. So I'm actually going to talk to you about Stedman Community Hospice, and then I will turn the podium over to Sandra to speak about our long-term care home. I'm sure most of you are familiar with Stedman Community Hospice, but we provide round-the-clock care for end-of-life patients in our community. We are located in Brantford, and we serve the city of Brantford, the county of Brant, as well as surrounding community and Six Nations. We are the only hospice within the city, the county, and surrounding areas. We also provide community outreach. So outreach is for patients who wish to remain in their home as long as possible. They have an end-of-life diagnosis, but they wish to remain in their home. So we have a team of doctors and nurses that actually go into the home to provide pain and symptom relief at the bedside. And our outreach program is for patients. It can be a few days, it could be several months for that program. I wanted to share a few numbers with you as far as the impact of the hospice in 2022. So there's quite a few numbers up here, but three of them that I want to specifically highlight is the age of patients that we care for. So last year we cared for patients as young as 1 month up to 102 years old. 991 families were cared for through our outreach program. And the final number is the cancer versus non-cancer diagnosis. So 73% of our patients had a cancer diagnosis and 27% had a non-cancer diagnosis. Few facts about hospice. So no family ever gets a bill for the care that they receive at the hospice. Hospice care is 1/3 the cost of hospital care. Hospice care is for the entire family, not just the patient. We care for individuals, again, of all ages. We also provide spiritual and emotional care. And we have an after-hours support line at the hospice, and that helps to reduce unnecessary trips to the emergency department. So lots of information on this slide, but given our time, I'm just going to share a little bit of overarching information. So the provincial government plays a critical role in funding hospice, but they only provide about 2/3 of the cost for hospice. So 1/3 of that needs to come from the community. So approximately $1.4 million every year needs to be raised through community donations to support the hospice. So we are very grateful to our partners in the community to help fund the hospice. The $1.4 million goes towards things like new beds, patient lifts, goes towards food for patients. It goes towards frontline nursing care, both in the hospice as well as in the community. So the next slide is actually a story from a family.
It's been 5 years since my mom passed away. I was 13 and I had just started grade 8. My mom went to her doctor and asked for a CT scan. They caught it too late though. She was diagnosed with a grade 3 terminal brain cancer. It was a very hard thing to go through. I think at any age it's hard to hear that your parent has something that you can't control. My journey with Stedman Community Hospice started when my mom was in outreach in January. It really built a sense of community for people that were going through something similar, as well as a community for also my family to see that there was more families going through the same thing and kind of a backbone to lean on. Once I was moved here to the residential hospice with my mom, they fulfilled her dying wish of seeing me graduate grade 8. My graduation actually took place in the hospice in the family room. My mom, being a grade 1, 2 teacher at Glen Morris, really valued education and everything that she did. And so for her to be able to watch me graduate grade 8 was a huge thing for her. It gave her so much hope, and I think it took her mind off of the pain for a little while. And we really just had a really great night, and it felt like there was a glimmer of hope in the journey. After my mom passed away, I knew that I wanted to be a volunteer at the hospice. I knew that I wanted to help more families that were like mine, because everybody deserves end-of-life care and their fullest potential. I think that being able to really give back through volunteering here, being a co-op student here, and the hospice here has really helped me blossom into who I am today. I definitely feel my mom around me all of the time. She's always around. She comes to visit me in the form of a butterfly. I can always feel that she's proud of me and that I'm doing what she would like.
Such a lovely story. Danica Miller is actually a resident of Paris. So what is it we're asking the County of Brant to consider tonight? We're asking you to consider funding for both our residents on Gray Street in Brantford, so our hospice in Brantford, as well as our community outreach program. So we're asking you to consider funding of $100,000. I'm going to turn it over to Sandra to talk about long-term care.
Thanks, and it's always really hard to go after a story like that. I'm surprised I'm not crying. I have cried already. That is the blessing of being in healthcare. I'll just share a little bit of my story. I started my career as a teacher and then went into manufacturing and had my mom pass away. And I needed to come to healthcare to make a difference. So that is why we get up every day, is for stories like this. So long-term care, I just want to share a little bit. It's because often we forget about our seniors. And I think having gone to long-term care as a career has really opened my eyes. I worked in an acute hospital, and the joy that we can bring our seniors who have a story. They are people who've given to our community, and For us, it's about trying to make their life experience at the end of their life something positive. So when we think about the impact that COVID has had, it's kind of like looking at the person through the ringer, the image of that. I think our residents have felt isolated, our staff have felt overwhelmed. And so the idea of creating something that brings hope is what we're hoping to do. So that is the visual of the person through the ringer. Our families have also felt a sense of fear because during our outbreaks, as you can see, we are still in COVID. If you go into the long-term cares, we are still wearing masks, etc. And so for us, it's like when we reflect on the experience we've had over the last 3 years, it's what's the through line? The through line is the humanity and the human experience. And so how do we create something that's innovative, creative, that lets us bring some of that human experience back into the home? So we looked at it and we said, let's reflect on our experience because it's through the reflection that we learn. It may not be intuitive, but our idea is, and this is something that we have partnered with Mohawk College with, is to bring Temi into the home. So Temi is an artificial intelligence robot that we are partnering with Mohawk to introduce into the lives of our residents. So in the photo, you will see our residents. And when we brainstormed with our residents about what the Temi robot can bring to them and the difference it can make in their lives, we all walked away super excited about this particular initiative. And so what we want to do is bring state-of-the-art technology that really hones in on the body, the mind, and the spirit. So we're going to introduce you to Temi. Oh, hold on. We are. I need help. Okay. No, Temi, you have to meet Temi. Oh, there we go. So we are hoping to, we do have a pilot project with Mohawk who's lending us Temi, and we are going to start to figure out exactly how Temi can make a difference based on all the feedback from our residents. And our goal is to buy Temi, program Temi in a way that is advanced thinking to enhance the lives of our residents and also the lives of our staff. I think, we have to think about staff and residents and enrich the life of the home. So thank you. Oh, the ask. Forgot the ask. 70. Our hope is that you would fund $70,000 for us to bring this project to life for the home.
Thank you. Are there any questions to the presenter? Councillor Miller?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the presenters. Just a question. Is anybody from Life Care and or Hospice a representative? Is somebody from one of your organizations sitting on the OHT?
So yeah, we play a role. Like David Warmwald, the president of St. Joseph's Life Care, is on the OHT executive, and then also I'm on the actual HR working group.
Okay, it's follow up, Mr. Mayor. The reason I'm asking that is because my ears perked up when you one of the hospice slides was showing. You talked about preventing hospital visits, and I don't know. To me, there should be money out there when you're doing stuff like that. So I don't understand that, but okay, just something to think about. So okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions for the presenter? No? Seeing none, thank you for coming. Thank you for all the good work you do. What do you want to do with, Councillor Miller?
Well, I'll just move to receive and refer to budget.
Seeking a seconder, Councillor Bell. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Heidi, I think you're next. Heidi from St. George Business Association. Why don't you just state your full name, Heidi, and you have 10 minutes.
To Mr. Bailey and to all you council members, thank you for having me. I am Heidi Gorder, and I am here on behalf of the St. George Business Association. My presentation is a little bit of a lighter note, and I hope it's just a nice way to end these presentations with acknowledgement to all the hard work that many of you put in. So we just want to take a few moments of your time. The County of Brant was very extremely helpful in our ability to actually start the St. George Business Association. A big thank you goes especially to Councillor John McAlpine, who saw the need and networked with the business community to find the right people. From there, the financial support from the County of Brant brought this idea to reality. COVID brought a halt to many of our plans, but this past year, 2022, we were able to get back to some of those. After the Business Association decided to run a car show on June 26th of 2022, we were informed that the County of Brant strategic initiatives were planning to support programs like this in towns including St. George. So this was a great news for us. Upon investigation and application, the Business Association car show was partnered with Love Local Street Social. The county staff, Kayla took the lead and worked with us providing everything from street entertainment, washrooms, logistics, and event promotion. So this was a huge help to us as a business association. The County of Brant Public Library staff was also very helpful in providing programming for all ages at this event. It was a very successful event, which included our own mayor's Mercedes convertible. It is our plan for the car show to become an annual event, so we are planning to do this again in 2023. In addition, we would also like to thank you for the progressive approach to the seasonal lighting for our village in the downtown. So you can see that on the slides. So this was something we've been kind of working on actually even prior to COVID. A big thank you to our mayor for his initial meeting with Katie Vinson and Linda Howell. and the discussions and visions of the future of our downtown core with all the possibilities. So for the support of our counselors at that time, who were John McAlpine and also John Wheat. And we're looking forward to the support of our present counselors, John McAlpine again, and Jen Kyle, for our future plans in terms of the lighting. Also a big thank you to Greg Demers, Director of Roads, who played a major role with regard to the site plan, troubleshooting, and being the liaison between the County of Brant and Grand Bridge Energy, while involving the business association step by step with regard to the choice of lights, their location, and troubleshooting of issues, as well as the willingness to put them up, take them down, and a big thing was housing them. So a big thank you for that. Also the continued communication in a positive and professional and very friendly manner. Thank you to Brian McDonald. His knowledge of the downtown of St. George was very beneficial. Clearly, so we as a group had met and chose kind of a generic light that was just pretty, and they were on sale, so we thought that was awesome. And then we found out they would have been too large and that the transport trucks delivering to the businesses in the downtown would have damaged them. So we were very grateful that we had the support of the county backing us before we made a purchase of something that would not have worked. So everyone was hoping to have them up for this season, and they were installed and up. And the residents and businesses in St. George are very appreciative. We had a lot of positive feedback. So we are still looking to further enhance and add to this display in the coming years, especially in our downtown core, our soon-to-be new parking area, and then around Snowball Park. So thank you again for all your support on behalf of the St. George Business Association. This year we hope to organize many more social events and include maybe some business after hours events to help build relationships between business owners in our village. We also hope to ensure our local businesses are kept up to date with the many incentive programs and opportunities that are provided by the county. Having Brandon Webb play an active role in our meetings has really helped strengthen the lines of communication between our association and the County of Brant. I can speak to myself like as a business in just outside of St. George, that it's been very beneficial to have all these different programs. I've taken part in some of the digital Main Street ones. So just a thank you from business owners, I think even probably across the whole county, but I'm speaking for the St. George Business Association, that we really appreciate the effort that you as a council put into this, and that it doesn't go unnoticed that all the time and effort that you put in. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Heidi. Are there any questions for Heidi? I would just like to say thank you for everything you do for the downtown. I think the lights look wonderful too. St. George, these are the same lights we put in Burford too. They look wonderful in Burford. They look wonderful in St. George, and we were glad to be able to find the money to have it done this year, because it's coming out of COVID and all the things that COVID brought. It was nice to see some light, some white light, and they look wonderful, and I'm glad staff got them up in time. It was just the day before, but they did get them up in time. So thank you to staff for making that happen, and thank you, Heidi, for thanking us. It's nice when people thank us. Thank you.
Yeah, I know. I'm sure it's nice
Thank
to
you.
get some good news. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Number 5 on the, we can just receive this for information. Jennifer and John McAlpine, thank you. All those in favor, just to receive his information, thank you. Number 5 on the agenda is the adoption of the minutes from the previous meeting. Councillor Garneau.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Chambers, that the County of Brant Special Council Training Session of December 20th, 2022, and the County of Brant Council Minutes of December 20th, 2022 be approved.
Thank you. Noting there's 2 sets of meetings to approve. All those in favor? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Business arising from the minutes, either set. 7.2, consent items to be received. Councillor Chambers.
It's moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Kyle that the consent items 721 to 7218 be received as information.
Councillor Miller, you want to separate something?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. 7.2.4.
Thank you. Any others to be separated? Oh, you were.
Me again, Mr. Mayor. I just note the conflicts there.
Okay, so you were 7.
0.2, 0.5, 0.7, and 0.8 there, please.
And 8. Okay, so we'll vote on everything but those 4. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. We'll go back to 7.2.4.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I know we have it later on where we are approving on under 8.5 Committee of the Whole 2023 Budget Report, and that would be the paramedic services. This is what the City of Brantford's paramedic draft budget is saying, and it doesn't quite align with what we were saying. So I'm just wondering how we stick handle our way around this.
We have staff here to speak to that. Daryl?
Certainly through the mayor to Councillor Miller. Yeah, so the paramedic services budget considered by City Council and approved is the same budget to be considered here as part of our budget. So if there's a discrepancy or something, we can certainly review, Councillor.
Okay.
Councillor Miller.
Thank you. Okay, maybe I'm wrong. Couple things. First of all, I don't believe they looked at any of the decision packages. If we were to look at the decision packages, how would that be dealt with? Because my understanding is we have to have our budget finalized and presented to them by February 1st, which is tomorrow. So that's the first question.
I know the clerk is aware that we have to have it back to them by tomorrow. I'm not sure about the decision. Heather's going to come up. I'm not sure about the decision package.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the presentation and what was forwarded to the city does include the one decision package that the county had approved and is included in tonight's resolution. The other pieces in the city's resolution is speaking to how they're going to fund these pieces. Doesn't affect the actual approval of the paramedic budget. They approve the budget, then they've decided how they're going to fund it.
Councillor Miller?
Okay, sorry to keep dragging this out, but I still don't understand. I was under the impression, and correct me if I'm wrong, we were going to fund this ambulance year 1. They are planning on doing it over 2 years, but you're saying it's still the same thing?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it is still the same thing. It's just they've taken it a step farther because in year 1 of an additional ambulance, it's split city-county. The province doesn't come into play. In year 2, they come in and they pick up part of it. But because we've staggered the start, it's not going to be a full year of provincial funding. So that's why the city's got ahead and said in 2024 how they're going to pick up that extra lacking of provincial funding per se.
I have a lot of trust in Heather, so I'm going to go with her answer. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Sorry.
Are there any other questions? Seeing and knowing that it has to be to the city again by tomorrow, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Opposed? Come on back. Okay, so that's those. Committee reports. 8.1 is the Planning and Development Committee report. Councillor McAlpine.
Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Miller that the Planning and Development Committee report of January 10th, 2023 be approved.
Are there any questions to Councillor McAlpine? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. 8.2, Policy and Development Strategic Direction Committee, Councillor Coleman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself, second by Councilor Bell, that the Policy Development and Strategic Direction Committee report of January 17th, 2023 be approved.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Councillor Coleman? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. 8.3, Administration and Operations Committee report. Councillor Pierce is not here.
Mr. Mayor, I'll stand in for him.
Thank you, Councillor Bell.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Howes, that the Administration and Operations Committee report of January 24th, 2023 be approved.
Thank you. Are there any questions to Councillor Pierce through Councillor Bell? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. 8.4, Consequences of Urban Intensification Committee report of January the 17th, 2023. Councillor Bell, do you want to report on this?
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Garneau, that the Consequences of Urban Intensification Committee report of January 17, 2023 be approved.
Are there any questions? Councillor McAlpine?
To discontinue this particular committee. And it's just something that I think maybe in the future, it may not be the time and place to bring this committee forward, but maybe it's something we could reconsider in the future at looking something along this line. Because I think there is a need for this particular avenue to have sort of a more in-depth conversations in a sort of more relaxed atmosphere, let's say.
Okay, Councillor Bell.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. It is true that the meeting we had was a strange one. We had at least 3 members of the committee who did not actually understand what we were there to do. So it took us a while to shake it down and understand that we were not just looking at the issue of backyard structures, but at the wider spread of issues that come with urban intensification. And it is also true that collectively, I think, the committee felt that each and every item that was listed, and there were 16, I think, listed, they were being effectively dealt with by other bodies of council. And those 2 items, I think, that weren't, were given the direction that you see in items 2 and 3 in the report, and that basically covered the whole issue. But I'm actually agreeing with Councillor McAlpine that it's easy to slice this thing up and say, yes, we're dealing with this, we're dealing with that. It's all covered, but there's a collective issue that doesn't get addressed, and we do as council need to, at some point, sit back and understand the consequences of urban intensification, not just in Paris, but what will come in St. George in the future and in intermittent spurts in other parts of the county. And I think it is our job as leaders of this community to take that view. Nobody else is going to do it for us. We will just be on the receiving end of complaints, concerns. During the meeting, it was said that I was just bringing forward a bitch list of issues that I had failed to resolve during the first 4 years of my term on council. Couldn't be further from the truth. What it is a list of the things that are actually happening in our community and are being felt by residents of our community, and to which our residents are looking to the council for resolution and support and direction. So collectively, there was a desire not to follow through with this committee, but we need to replace it with something And I'm not sure what that mechanism is, but it is something that is missing from our efforts as a council. And I think it's worth reflecting on the fact the way the city have done this, just as an example, and I'm sure other people have different ways of doing it. They go away as a council and they talk about the issues that are facing them in their term of council. And they prioritise those issues and they give that direction, helpful direction to staff and to the community. So the community knows what we think is important. And in that process, of course, they can challenge us, and I hope they do, and say, well, I think you're wrong, or I think you're right. But there's no lack of clarity about what we think is important in our community and what we will strive to achieve in these 4 years of this term of office. So at that point, I will say thank you. And I appreciate those people that came to the committee meeting. It was the strangest meeting I've ever had. To get there and find that half the committee didn't know what we were there for was mightily puzzling. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bell. Are there any other comments about that meeting or that committee? Councillor Miller?
I'll just say that just because it didn't work this time doesn't mean we can't try it again maybe next year or something like that. And maybe it's just as well because I think we got a lot of other things on our plate for this year. So, but I wouldn't give up on it because I agree with Councillor Bell. I think there are a lot of items. It would be good if we as elected leaders could get out in front of, and we know what most of those are. I mean, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure that out. So kudos on them for trying. But like I say, let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater just yet.
Any other comments? Yeah, I was at that meeting too, and it was a strange one. Thank you, Councillor Bell, for attempting that meeting. I think you had the right intentions. I was concerned by how much staff was at that meeting and how much it cost us to have that meeting when we were so unclear as to why we were there ourselves. There was there was thousands of dollars of staff in the room, which we didn't call on very often. So I think you're right. I think we shouldn't give up on the idea of what we tried to do, but I think there's other ways of doing it. And I'm sure that we'll figure that out quickly. I think the intentions were great, Councillor Bell. So thank you for that. And I hope there's no hard feelings as to some of the things that were talked about and some of the things that were said in the manner that they were said. I think your intentions were good. Any other comments? All those in favor? Opposed? And carried. Committee of the Whole is 8.5, and that's Councillor House, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Bell that the Committee of the Whole meeting 2023 budget report of January 18th, 2023 be approved.
Thank you. Are there any questions to Councillor House, for Councillor House? Seeing none, all those in favor to receive the report? Thank you. Staff reports, there are none. Communications, 10.1 communications. Because this is part of the last council's business, it can be considered new business if the council wants to do anything with it. Asking the council what they want to do with 10.1. Any suggestions, Councillor Bell?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do recall this coming up last time round. I do recall the rationale for rejecting it, and I don't think there's a reason for change. So if you need a motion to reject it, I would make that motion.
Yeah, so we can do that. We can either reject it or we can just receive it as information.
Then I make a motion to receive as information.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor House. Any other comments to it? 10.1, Councillor Chambers.
Just a comment to the resolution. I'm not going to support it because I think the property owner has a right to have it heard by a council as he is requesting. So to shut it down without a report, I think is perhaps not doing the issue justice. I would sooner have a report, discuss it, and then if need be, reject it or approve it or whatever. But the outcome may not be different, but at least the process should be followed.
Okay, just noting that it's been rejected twice, Councillor Chambers now. Nothing's changed as far as that I can see. Do you see something that changes the application in any way that was rejected twice?
I don't, but perhaps some of the new members of council may have a different viewpoint and bring something to the table that was not brought before, and they have the opportunity to do that, and perhaps, who knows, what could happen with the new council. That's why it's, allowable to be brought forward by at a new session.
With that being said, are we still going to just receive it? It's been seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. 11.1 is the Random Act of Kindness Day. Councillor Bell, you have that.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Oakley. I'll read it out. Whereas Brant Community Foundation, a charity serving Brantford, Brant County, Six Nations of the Grand River and Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation build community vitality, and whereas February 17th, 2023 has been earmarked by the Brant Community Foundation as a day to recognise kindness and humanity in our communities, and whereas Brant Community Foundation is committed to encouraging random acts of kindness as a way to touch the lives of another and make our world a better place, now therefore be it resolved that the Council of the County of Brant proclaim February 17th, 2023 to be Random Act of Kindness Day, and encourages all citizens to embrace kindness and pay acts of kindness forward as a key to achieving a better community.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? Opposed and carried. 11.2, Wear Red Canada Day. Councillor Garneau.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Chambers. Whereas heart disease is the #1 killer of women worldwide and the leading cause of premature death for Canadian women, a fact unknown to many women and their healthcare providers. And whereas the Canadian Women's Heart Health Alliance is an organization of volunteer health professionals and patients working hard to improve women's heart health. And whereas Wear Red Canada Day is celebrated annually to raise awareness for all Canadians, but especially Canadian women, to be mindful, curious, and proactive in the management of their heart health and wellness. And whereas we want to see a better prevention, diagnosis, and care and fewer women dying prematurely from heart disease, therefore, that the Council of the County of Brant hereby proclaims February 13th, 2023 Wear Red Canada Day in Brant.
Any questions? Comments? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. 11.3, Councillor Howes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Oakley. Whereas at the November 22nd, 2022 council meeting, County of Brant Council approved the 2023 council and standing committee calendar. And whereas amendments to the calendar must be made by resolution, and whereas the Policy Development and Strategic Direction Committee meets on the second Tuesday of the month at 6 p.m. in council chambers, and whereas the February Policy Development and Strategic Direction Committee is scheduled to start at 6 p.m. on February 14th, which is Valentine's Day, therefore, that the start time of the February 14th Policy Development and Strategic Direction Committee be moved to 3 o'clock as a courtesy to all who would be attending.
Are there questions for Councillor Howes? Councillor Chambers, and then Councillor Coleman.
Mr. Mayor, I'm not going to support the resolution for the following reasons. We do schedule ahead of time regular meetings at regular times, and this particular committee meeting is a standard time and place and day of the week. The reason we set regular time schedules is to allow council members who may have other working commitments or other activities to schedule around those particular set days. So if I have a doctor's appointment with a specialist in Hamilton at 2:15 that day, then there's no way I'm going to be able to attend that meeting. And the reason I can't attend that meeting is because I have a doctor's appointment. And the reason the meeting is being changed is to celebrate Valentine's Day. To me, that is unfair to the councillors who can't be here. And that's why I'm not going to support the motion. I think we should stick to the regular schedule, except in cases of situations perhaps more relevant to be changing than Valentine's Day.
Thank
So
you,
I won't be able to
Councillor
attend.
Thank you. Councillor Coleman, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I'm very much along with the lines of what Councilor Chambers just said. We set a schedule back a few months ago when these meetings are going to be, and I believe in sticking to them. This coming Thursday, is budget day. We got an all-day meeting, and that's a very important day to some of us here. Councilor Kyle and I will probably agree with me. That's Groundhog Day. So do we change the time, or do we move the date of the meeting for Groundhog Day? No. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Are there any other comments? Councillor Kyle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think I'd be remiss if I didn't express my agreement with both Councillor Chambers and Councillor Coleman. I think just thinking about the last couple of months, we've had a lot of daytime meetings, so especially for those of us that do have full-time jobs, it is a lot more challenging, especially on short notice, to be able to shuffle things around. So I think for sure, for the same reasons that the other gentlemen have expressed, I think I would agree with them as well.
Thank you, Councillor. Are there any other comments before we call the vote? Oh, we missed the seconder. Who was your seconder?
It was Councillor Oakley.
Thank you. Councillor Miller, please.
Just a question, because maybe staff doesn't know. Do we know how heavy the agenda is for that day?
It's being checked out. That's the question I asked too, and it is doable to change the meeting if you wanted to.
It's not that so much as I got another meeting at 7 that night. I kind of like the change in time, but I understand why people don't want to change it. And if it was a shorter agenda, I could support the 6 o'clock too.
Thank you. Are there any other comments before we call the vote? So that. Oh, okay.
Through your worship to Councillor Miller, taking a quick look at what's on the agenda thus far, there are 3 items coming forward to that report or to that committee meeting.
Any other comments? Okay, so the vote is to support the motion in front of us from Councillor House. All those in favor? Opposed? Okay. And defeated. Number 12 on the agenda is other business, and that's Councillor Chambers, please.
Yes, I think General Manager Dusling is on the video, so she may want to speak to this. I've been informed by staff that the next Planning and Development Committee is fairly heavy, and the April meeting is fairly heavy, but the March meeting, there are no public hearings scheduled and no staff reports to come forward at that time. So the question was whether we should cancel the meeting on March the 7th. And I said that I would bring it forward. It has to be done by resolution, obviously. And we have the opportunity to discuss whether we want to cancel it at the next Planning Committee meeting. But I'm thinking in light of some of the discussions about the ad hoc committee, it may be an opportunity to have a meeting without public hearings of the Planning Committee meeting to discuss general planning issues that people may want to bring forward, such as perhaps what I may feel is an unintended consequence of intensification, and the discussion would occur. Other members of council may have items that they would like to bring to the Planning Committee for discussion that it's a little bit hard to do when you have 17 public hearings and those kind of meetings. So I just wanted to give a heads up to the committee members that a discussion on whether to cancel the March meeting may occur at the February 7th Planning Committee meeting. So if there are issues that you want to bring forward, or if you feel that the meeting is unnecessary, we can discuss that at the next Planning Committee meeting.
Thank you,
and the reason apparently that there is a lull in the public hearings is there's a reaction to the development community on Bill 109, and the application process is a little bit more stringent and to have a complete application. So there's adjustments being made, and that's why we're having maybe a little bit of lull in public hearings and applications.
I'm sure it's a welcome lull for the hard work they've been putting in lately. So thank you for that. We'll wait to hear more about that at the next meeting. The next thing on the agenda is number 13 in camera. Councillor Chambers, you're going to take us there? Councillor McAlpine. Thank you. All those in favor? We'll go in. We'll take 10 minutes.